I want to show you this article. This is from Iran International, and it says Iran and Russia talk more economic cooperation amid sanctions. Moscow and Tehran are working on a 20-year strategic cooperation deal, according to Lavrov, who's the Russian foreign minister. Tehran's top diplomat met Lavrov in Moscow on Wednesday and discussed an array of foreign policy issues, but also more economic cooperation, as both are under international banking and energy sanctions, right? You guys remember before the Ukraine war started, Iran used to be the number one sanctioned country by the US, and it had around 3,000 sanctions on it. Then the Ukraine war started, and the Americans piled on Russia with 5,500 plus sanctions. I've noted that they've increased since that figure a few months ago. And so now Russia is the number one sanctioned country in the United States. Remember, sanctions are not legal. They're actually illegal. They only apply inside the United States. One of the main sectors that was really hit badly by Trump, by his maximum pressure campaign, is Iran's banking sector. The other, it's its oil sector, but here they're talking about banking. Russia, much bigger gas exporter than Iran, and is also a major oil exporter. So when we say energy, we're talking about gas and oil, both of them, right? So what is the status right now? Basically, the EU has banned Russian oil and Russian gas. Some countries have to phase it out because they rely so much on Russian gas, they just can't do it from, like flicking a light switch or from one day to the next. Iran has the same problem, that it wants to sell its oil. It has millions upon millions of barrels of oil just lying there in storage, waiting to be exported. And it cannot do it because, country A, for example, might want to buy Iran's oil. But then the United States says, okay, fine, you can buy Iran's oil, but then I am going to sanction you. That means I'm going to forbid your energy or your exports or your whatever from being just simply I'm going to outlaw and sanction your goods, and then it's like a domino effect, right? So the idea is they isolate these countries, and it does have an effect, right? It does have an effect when you can't sell your oil or whatever your exports are, your major exports. You're going to lose revenue, and this causes immense suffering for the people. Okay, remember, sanctions. I'm sorry, Putin is not living worse now because he's sanctioned. All the Iranians and Russians, they're officials mostly, and people who are crucial to getting the country running and rolling and staying up top. They want you to believe that the sanctions are hurting the leaders and the officials, but that's a lie. It's regular, civilians, your average Joe, random people, the entire civilian population that are really being hit by the sanctions. When we look at something like this, where they're talking about a 20-year strategic cooperation deal, this is basically Iran and Russia saying, screw you to the West. Now, Iran might have its sanctions lifted soon because of the Iran nuclear deal being finished here in who knows how long, but maybe it could be a few days, a few weeks. But it's not certain. It's not certain that they will revive it. So Iran is not hedging all its bets on, the Iran deal. It's not putting all of its eggs in one basket. Iran is thinking, you know what, just in case, I am going to be cool with the Russians because they're a big player. The United States is scared of them. They've realized that actually if they cooperate together, they don't even need the West. I'm not saying, from one day to the next, this happened. No, this is a process that is gradual. It takes a long time. And that's what we're talking about when we say there's a rise of the East well, in the Western press they say, rising China, like, it's like those posters, like, of some communists, like, coming to get you, or something. Professor Marendi said just a few hours ago when we spoke, remember, he is advising the Iranian delegation in Vienna, at the one that's carrying out the nuclear talks. And he said that the sticking point around the IRGC can be flipped on its head, or shall we say, Iran can maybe use it to its advantage. What does that mean? Well, the IRGC is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Basically, it's a very elite and integral part of the Iranian armed forces. The United States placed it on its terrorist list, on the FTO. In response, the Iranians placed the United States CENTCOM, Central Command, on its terrorist list. In any case, right now in the nuclear talks, Iran, of course, wants the United States to lift this label because it doesn't want these sanctions. However, the United States is saying no. They're saying this has nothing to do with the Iran deal. I mean, it technically really does, because you're supposed to facilitate trade for Iran and make sure that it's not, prevented or impeded from existing, man, and just buying stuff and selling stuff in the global market, and using finance, the financial sector. I mean, this is basic stuff, but no, it's verboten. Iran's been asking to lift this label, and in the media now they're saying that Iran doesn't care anymore. Iran has dropped this demand. Iran doesn't care that the United States will not lift the terrorism label on the IRGC. And that, the talks can finally proceed. I mean, this is a lie, because Iran never said this is a prerequisite, right, or a precondition for signing the deal. Okay? Iran would like that, but it's not a red line. You understand? Iran never said that, you better lift the label or else there's no nuclear deal. Iran never said that. The media are telling you that Iran said that because they want to make it look like, Biden and the Americans are, they got one over on the Iranians and they're able to put pressure on them and make progress. The article continues and says that despite a lot of rhetoric about close relations, bilateral trade between the two countries is quite small, only recently reaching $4 billion US dollars. The reason for this is that Russia, until its invasion of Ukraine, had a trade oriented toward the West and China, rather than Iran. Russian consumers could afford Western goods, and China, Vietnam, and others filled the void for cheaper merchandise. But that can somewhat change. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, mentioned plans to launch a free trade zone with Iran. A free trade zone with Iran, and the two allies have been holding talks with Azerbaijan to have a trade corridor from north to south. Still, Russia can benefit more from trade with Turkey, since the latter has not joined Western sanctions. Another project is for Iran to join Russia's Mir payment system, launched in 2017 after the first Western sanctions hit Moscow after Crimea in 2014. The central bank launched the national card payment system after 2014, which issued the Mir payment system later. Both Russia and Iran are cut off from MasterCard and Visa, and Iran is completely banned from the Western banking communication system SWIFT, while also some Russian banks were disconnected from the fast money transfer service in March. The Mir system itself is now contained by around 100 million card holders, only having access to their Russian bank accounts and unable to do transactions with e-commerce websites elsewhere, except a few former Soviet republics, but that are also part of the Mir. So, again, I've explained all of this to you. We've went through the Mir payment system. It sounds like, it's something small. It doesn't mean anything. Oh, no. Listen, man. What they're saying in this article, and what I have been telling you before, is that SWIFT and Visa, MasterCard, pulling out of Russia, pulling out of Iran, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Do you understand? Because right now you can say, oh, the mere payment system, that's just in Russia. Who cares? It's a closed thing. It can't, it's incomparable to Visa, MasterCard. Maybe today. Are you sure, though, that's going to be the case in 5 years, 10 years? I'm not. On the contrary, I think that these things will grow. The mere payment system is already growing. Not even months after the war in Ukraine started and the sanctions hit. Do you understand? Iran is not hedging its bets on the nuclear deal. They are ready, and they will increase cooperation with Russia, because the East is now where you want to be. A card payment system that has 100 million users, and then now going to expand to Turkey, to Iran, to Venezuela. This is huge. And China. Union Pay, which is the Chinese one, expanding into Russia. I mean, this is unprecedented. No one would have thought of this, before all these sanctions hit. No one. Here, this is from AA. They say Russia, Iran, to create cooperation mechanisms independent from the West, according to Lavrov. Russia and Iran are concentrating on creating mechanisms that will allow them to develop cooperation regardless of the diktats of the West. The leaders of the two countries defined concrete areas where the governments should make efforts to achieve the goals. Our Western colleagues, in an effort to establish their complete dominance in the world, purposely and consistently destroy the entire structure of international relations. Meanwhile, we are concentrating together with our friends, including, of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran, on creating reliable, constructive mechanisms that will allow us to develop mutually beneficial cooperation regardless of any diktat. The Russians and the Iranians, when they say increased cooperation, it doesn't only mean economic. There are other domains. For example, a few weeks ago, we saw that Iran is sending drones to Russia. Could you have ever thought of such a thing before? I mean, it's so funny, like Professor Marandi mentioned, that they're making fun of Iran's drones and then saying, oh, it's really concerning that they're sending them to Russia. Are they good or are they not good? That's besides the point anyway. Like, they can't make up their minds, but it's besides the point. Everything that we've been saying about China, Russia, India, Iran, all cooperating together on a really unprecedented level is true, and it continues to be true. And this is why, these sanctions, they are definitely hurting people in Iran and in Syria and so on. They hurt, but they're not hurting politicians, they're hurting civilians. And there's going to come a point, and I think we are at that point now, where the United States has gone too far with these sanctions. I mean, from one sanction, it's already too far. But my point is, they've underestimated their foe. And to be fair, I think the Russians also underestimated what would happen in Ukraine. I think they thought this would be a quick in and out, and now it's 6 months. It's been 6 months. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm talking about the sanctions. They thought they will sanction the ruble. Well, too bad. The ruble is now stronger. It's the strongest it's been in 2 years. People are buying oil, which used to be, basically the oil is what props up the dollar, which makes the dollar a desired reserve currency. And now people are buying oil in other currencies, undermining the dollar. My God, man, we could go on and on. Listen to this clip. This is from the announcement earlier today. That's Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister.
The current century is called geoeconomic, and some countries use the instrument of sanctions to put pressure on peoples. These countries endanger our own interests. Iran has 40 years of experience under sanctions. We see that in recent months the same sanctions have been introduced against Russia. The interests of the peoples are not taken into account. How can one get out of this situation when the interests of the peoples are not taken into account? Probably. We need to draw conclusions from what is happening in the world and not allow any people interested in their independent, self-respectful development to find themselves in a situation where someone could try to take them into hostages. This requires one specific thing. You need to understand that the globalization that has been advertised to us over the past decades, on the basis of which the international monetary, financial and economic systems have been built, this globalization pursued the sole purpose of ensuring the interests, first of all, of the United States and its satellites. Now we can talk about it directly. And the unreliability of this system of globalization has been repeatedly proven in recent years. This is a huge abuse of the role of the dollar. This is manipulation of the procedures of the World Trade Organization, which no longer suit the United States. Therefore, all countries that are thinking about their future should not only draw conclusions, but they should take practical steps to build a system of their foreign economic relations independent of the American dictate and the dictate of the collective West. We are actively engaged in this with all our key, reliable partners, including the Islamic Republic of Iran. We talked about this today as well. And this will be the focus of the agenda of the forthcoming regular meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission on Trade and Economic Cooperation. Getting away from dependence on the West in those areas that are key to ensuring national interests is now the #1 task for all self-respecting states. As for our energy cooperation with Iran, it is developing progressively. Along with nuclear energy, along with the Bushehr nuclear power plant project, work is already underway on the second and third units. Today we decided and discussed issues of financing. They require special attention. At the same time, cooperation in the oil and gas sector is also developing. Russian companies are making plans and are already starting to implement them with their Iranian partners.
You know, this idea of the West owning the whole world through Wall Street, through the IMF, etc., this era, I think, is coming to an end. Could be wrong. It's not going to happen from one day to the next. And we don't know what lies ahead, what the next world is going to be. But I think it's going to be a multipolar one. And I think that regardless of how it turns out, this current, system that we have, this global economic system, it's not, the problem is not that it's global. The problem is that it's being controlled by a bunch of assholes. to put it bluntly. Do you understand? The United States is weaponizing the dollar to hurt people, to hurt civilians, to put them under sanctions, to ruin their lives. This is not okay. Every time you see me do a segment about, Iran and China, or China and Iran, anyone in the global south increasing their cooperation, working together on another level, that is another nail in the coffin of Western imperialism. I think the West really shot themselves in the foot. They fucked up royally. They have fucked up royally. All these sanctions are blowing up in their face, or rather their citizens' faces. The sanction blowback is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Unprecedented. They have shot themselves in the foot. They have no gas. They have no oil. The ruble is better than it was, before the war. And their system is collapsing. Using the IMF to control countries. They trap them, with debt and then control their politics. This dollar being weaponized against anyone Uncle Sam doesn't like. Stealing half of the Russian central bank's reserves. I mean, who does that? That money does not belong to Putin. It belongs to the Russian people. And, all of this stuff, man, this is the West shooting itself in the foot. They don't know when to stop, and they've gone too far, because Russia is not, some country. And I'm not trying to say it's better than, Venezuela or something. No, but Russia has so much energy that flows into Europe. Russia is such a big player when it comes to Europe and its stability, that this was bound to blow up in people's faces in the West. It was just destined to happen, unfortunately.